everybody. Welcome to episode 249 of a Wrestling Gal podcast, providing you with the female perspective on all things wrestling. Join me, your host and wrestling enthusiast, Ella J. As today, I am joined by reality of wrestling superstar, Gigi Rey. Now let's chat. Hello, everybody. Today I am joined by reality of wrestling star Gigi Rey. So how are you doing today?
I am doing good. How are you?
I'm fantastic to be speaking with you because at the time of recording this, I will likely be seeing you in a few weeks in a little place called Wrestlemania weekend. So that's going to be super fun. I am so excited. I can't believe it's coming up so fast.
I am so excited. And to be honest, it's because I moved to Texas this past summer, and that was kind of a big selling point for me. That was WrestleMania is going to be in Dallas this year, and to get the opportunity to wrestle on Wrestlemania weekend, I'm so excited. So I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah.
So this will be airing after WrestleMania, but what are some of the things that you'll be doing that weekend that you're going to be super excited for?
So I've been to WrestleMania before as a fan, and so this year, I'm probably not going to get a chance to actually go to WrestleMania, but just to kind of be around it and just to be around so many people that love wrestling is really, really cool. Because wrestling is kind of its own little culture niche sort of thing. In your everyday life, you probably don't have a lot of friends that follow wrestling, right? So to kind of be in that environment with so many different wrestlers and so many different fans of it, and then especially this year to be on a couple shows during WrestleMania weekend, it's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to it, and it'll be really fun.
Of course. It's crazy too that this little thing called wrestling is bringing all together. I have people coming in who I'm friends with from Australia, from the UK, from Canada, all over the States. It's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the thing too. When I went to WrestleMania, I went to WrestleMania 33 in Orlando, and met so many cool people from Australia, from Ireland, other people from Canada. And it's we all just love wrestling, and and you get to go to a show with them, and you don't even know them, but you can go grab a beer with them afterwards and just talk about wrestling, and you immediately have something in common with them. And it's really, really cool. And I'm still friends with those people from Ireland, still talk to the people from Australia. And yeah, so wrestling's awesome. It's so fun.
It really is. And of course, before we get into more things wrestling, I know you've traveled quite a bit in your life, including to Iceland a few years ago, which I'm extremely jealous of, Gigi. So can you tell me more about that experience in the lovely land of Iceland?
Iceland was awesome. It is the coolest little country that you could go to. And the weather there is so crazy. I was there for a week with my mom, and I think we experienced every single season within 1 week. It was really hot one day, and then you drive to other area of the island, and it's cold, and it's snowing, and then it's raining, and the scenery is just so amazing. It's crazy to think that there's places in the world that actually look like that. And just the landscape is so different all over the island, and I don't know, it's kind of an expensive place. They have their own currency and stuff there, but it is such a cool place. I encourage anyone who has a chance to go to Iceland to go do it. There's so many cool things to see. It's its own little culture and place, and it's really beautiful. I loved everything about my trip to Iceland.
Even just from the photos, I was just taken back. I was it looks amazing. Obviously you said traveling different parts of the island. What were some of your favorite things that you did or experienced there?
We went and saw a couple waterfalls that are really beautiful. Just I love nature, and just the landscape of it. Everything is just so fresh and so clean. And even the water, it's they're known for how amazing their glacier water is. So my mom and we went on this hike, and there's literally water coming out of a glacier, and you can literally just take your water bottle and fill it up from a glacier and drink it. And it's so pure. And I know it sounds a little weird, but it's anyone that's gone to Iceland has probably done that. And it's really neat. And then even there's spas or pools that they have, even there, that water is like all clean, and you have to like completely wash your whole body of any oils or soaps or lotions that you have before you go into their water, because you don't want to like contaminate it. And that's just part of the culture there. And I don't know, it's amazing.
Oh, it sounds
It's so
amazing.
beautiful.
It
Yeah.
sounds
And then,
amazing.
and then I saw like the geysers that like, shoot the water
Yeah.
out. Like everything there is so cool. Like it's such a cool place. I want to go back now talking about it.
Yeah, it sounds like it too. It's one of those places where I feel like not a lot of people get to experience, but it's been on like my bucket list, like for like within top 5 for like the longest time, because just
Yeah.
it seems so special. And
Well, if you
all of
ever
that.
go, pack for like all the seasons, because you'll like experience all of them.
I bet that honestly sounds like kind of where I'm from with buffalo. I call it bipolar buffalo because literally one day, like Sunday, was the snowstorm with a lot of stuff in the Northeast, but then like yesterday was like 60 degrees.
Yeah. That's kind of what Iceland is like. And they do have their seasons where it's like their wintry season, spring season and stuff. But yeah, it's a beautiful place, beautiful country. I loved every moment I was there. I wish I was there longer. I was only there for a week, but
yeah, a week is certainly a long time though to experience everything. But speaking of traveling, I mean, you did return back to Canada recently and even went snowboarding. So is that something that came naturally to you, or how would you rate your snowboarding skills?
I'm a pretty good snowboarder. Actually, originally, probably like 10 years ago, I actually was training to compete in snowboarding. I wanted to do like slope style, so the kind of stuff you see on the Olympics. Not that I was going to be an Olympian by any means, but that's kind of the route I wanted to go down. I wanted to train and compete in snowboarding competitions. So I used to do like tricks and jumps and rails and all that stuff, like snowboarding rails, not like rails. Yeah. And I ended up breaking my wrist really, really bad. I like detached my whole hand off my wrist going off of a big jump. Just took a really nasty fall. And after that, I still snowboard, but I just never really got back into competing. I think at the time I was maybe in my early 20s, and it is an expensive hobby to do, to snowboard and stuff. And then my life was kind of just going a different direction, so I stopped. So now I just do it as a hobby, and I just love it. I love being out on the mountain. That is like the thing I miss the absolute most about Canada, is just like the mountains. And even in the summertime, you can just go and hike, and in the wintertime to be able just to snowboard all over the place it's beautiful. It's like, to me, snowboarding is like heaven on earth. Like it's the most beautiful scenery. I don't care how cold it is, like just the feeling of anyone that has snowboarded, and the feeling of like snowboarding on like fresh snow and like fresh powder is like unreal. And yeah, I love snowboarding. It's my favorite.
And snow is not something that you get very often in Texas. So definitely traveling there in winter is very smart on your part.
Yeah, well, because when I was because I went back to Canada, just this past month in February.
Yeah.
And it started to get a little cold here in Texas, and everyone's freaking out.
Now,
they're like, oh, don't drive.
What's their definition of cold, Gigi?
Okay, so I'm still like pretty Canadian, so I do everything in Celsius.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
like,
okay.
3 degrees Celsius, which I believe is maybe around like
30 something. 30 something, that would be Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was around that. It was about 3 degrees Celsius, around 20 Fahrenheit, maybe 18. And everyone's freaking out. They're like, don't go driving, like stay inside. The roads are going to be icy. And I'm like, I am built for this weather. Like maybe you don't go out and drive. I'm going to be fine. And so I was excited to come back to Canada during the winter to like just experience winter, the snow. I loved all of it. I loved every second of it.
Definitely too. I mean, it's got to be weird. Do you still have your phone like set to Celsius?
I did have it set to Fahrenheit for, I think, during the summertime, because I wanted to see what like 100 degrees Fahrenheit was, and it was hot. But somehow I went back to Celsius, so I'm still in Celsius mode.
You're kind of used to both of it by now, I would definitely think. Would you say too that you're a person who enjoys the outdoors and nature? Would you say?
I am. I'm 100%. And like, I like Texas, but like Houston doesn't really have a lot of that. It's a lot of concrete, a lot of freeways. So that's been hard for me not having that. Like there are a couple nice parks that I'll go to like regularly and stuff to kind of get my nature fix. But yeah, I felt so energized to come back to Canada and just experience like the outdoors again.
And I mean, I've seen you've been in Colorado Springs, you've been to
Mhm.
Iceland, Canada.
Mhm.
In between all of that or anywhere else, what would you say is maybe the most adventurous or daring experience you ever been on in nature or the outdoors?
Oh, okay. That one's easy. So a few years ago, a long time ago, maybe like 10 years ago at this point, maybe less than that, maybe 8, I went to Costa Rica with one of my friends, and we did this kind of like surfing and yoga retreat, and which was really, really cool. And it's like, yeah, I know how to snowboard, so like maybe I'll pick up like surfing pretty well. I have never been so humbled by nature in my life. So we went surfing, and like surfing is very difficult, and it's really cool. Anyone that's tried it, like, good on you. It's a very hard skill to learn. One day, the place that we normally would surf at, the waves weren't very good. So they took us to this other beach to go surf there. And I literally thought I was going to die. Like I was just getting pummeled after wave after wave after wave. I thought I was going to drown. And like I literally remember being underneath the waves, getting pummeled after wave because they kind of come in sets, right? Thinking that I'm like, hey, well, this is how I die. I'm going to drown. And I don't like to give up at stuff. So I kept trying to like get back up on the surfboard until eventually I was like, no, I got to ride this board like back to shore, or else like I'm going to die out here. So now I have like a very healthy fear of the ocean. And that like, so I don't know if I would like to try surfing again, but yeah, it was a very humbling experience. So I mean, like, kudos to anyone that like surfs. Like it's a very scary sport.
Drowning is one of my worst fears, almost drowning in like high school swim class. Like,
Yeah.
I can still swim and stuff, but it's still like a fear. Like that's like my worst fear. Like honestly, is drowning. It's very scary. I can't imagine going out. That's why I haven't ever gone surfing or anything. Like I'm fine swimming and whatever, but when it's like waves, nah, not for me.
Or even just like being out on a boat or in a lake. And if I can't see the bottom of the ocean or like the lake, it's like you don't know what's down there. It's like that's a whole other, like, the water is a whole other world that like we don't even really know about.
When it's that like, deep, nope, not for me.
Not for me. And it's like, even like, I don't know, I'm a little scared of like fish. So like, I don't like when they swim around me and stuff. So like snorkeling's kind of cool, but as long as I can like see the fish from afar.
Yeah.
But yeah, that surfing experience, I'll never forget that. A very humbling experience for sure.
I bet. Well, with like the fish and wildlife underwater, you don't know if something's like poisonous or could have like something weird to it. So I don't know.
No, not at all. Like, very healthy fear of water is like my way I like to put it. So
yeah, definitely too. But I mean, between flying and driving too, you've definitely had your fair share of driving. I mean, driving all the way to Winnipeg at one point, which I don't know how you did that. But for you, maybe what has been the craziest or weirdest travel or road experience that you've had?
Well, that trip to Winnipeg actually wasn't that bad because I had a car full of friends.
Okay.
So that made the trip really, really great. And that was kind of like, when you get into wrestling, you hear about these long road trips that you do with like friends and other workers and stuff. So that was kind of like my first road trip. So that was really fun. Most recently though, so I'm in Houston, and then I went out to Orlando for some wrestling stuff. And I have a dog with me, and I wanted to fly, but it was a little complicated flying with my dog. And then I was also going to Orlando, and then I was going to Tampa. So I felt like I needed a vehicle. So I decided to drive from Houston to Orlando to Tampa and back to Houston by myself with my dog. And that was a mistake. Like, I did it in one day, driving to Orlando and then going Tampa back to Houston also in one day. So that was like a 14-hour drive by myself. I don't even remember the last 2 hours of the drive. I just remember like showing up in my apartment being like, how did I get here? Because I was just like in such a daze from like driving for hours by myself. So I should have split that drive up in like 2 days each time, but I don't know. So I probably won't do that again. That was a weird experience. And it's like not very safe. I mean, I was by myself, and like no one really knew where I was going. I didn't really tell anyone I was going out to Orlando. Like I kind of just went. And then, so that was a little weird.
I mean, at least you had a companion, right? Your dog. How did your dog fare with the long trip?
Oh, he was fine. He's like, he's a bit older. He's 11. So I know that he'd rather kind of just be with me versus me like sending him to like a border or something like that. So he's a good passenger. He can't help with the driving, but at least I had like I don't know, something there with me, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough too. And I mean, on those like long flights or road trips, do you have any like road trip music playlists or maybe podcasts that you listen to at all?
I definitely listen to podcasts. I listen to like the same playlist I've been listening to for the last like 4 years. So like I kind of like my music and I don't really venture outside of it too much. But I'll listen to like a wrestling podcast. I used to be really into like the Bachelor franchise, so I'll listen to like a Bachelor recap franchise. I didn't watch the last season because
I
yeah, I was
only
kind of
watched the one season with Peter, and that was a whole mess.
oh
That was
worst Bachelor of all time.
and that's the only one I've ever seen because my friend convinced me to watch it. That ending was a mess.
Oh, like he is the worst Bachelor ever. And I was pissed when they picked him as the Bachelor. I was like, this guy really? No one wants to date this guy.
First he wants Madison, then Hannah Ann by default.
Oh, I know. And then
now
he's with Kelly. He proposes to Hannah Ann, he mentions Maddie's name. And I'm like, oh my God, you're disgusting.
And now apparently he's with Kelly, last I heard. So I don't know.
I think they broke up. But
probably.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but I know. Like I literally have goosebumps thinking about Peter. I just
Unfortunately, it's the only season I've seen too. I was like, no.
That's okay. It's like it's memorable for me because like I've never disliked a Bachelor so much as I dislike Peter. So it's kind of funny. So I don't mind that you brought it up because I'll always hate on Peter. I don't care.
No, fair enough. I mean, what a mess of a first season I watched too.
Oh, it was a mess. But you know, that's not a bad season to watch because like that's kind of the drama we like to watch with those shows. And yeah.
So much drama that season. But talking about traveling too, like we said, you did recently return to Canada to finally defend your PWA Women's Championship. Unfortunately, you lost it to Zoe Sager, but the record books still do show you as the longest reigning champion. But
that's right.
What was that, I would say, kind of homecoming like for you?
It was, God, I get like emotional thinking about it. It was the best. It was, I've been so fortunate to do a lot of really cool stuff in wrestling over this last year. But that going home and wrestling with those girls and seeing like my old trainer from before, like MRB, and like wrestling and just being around them was like, it was my favorite thing in wrestling that I've done. And like we got to wrestle like in the Saddle Dome, which is like where the Calgary Calgary Flames hockey team play. And wrestle in a ring. We built the ring on the ice and had this huge show in front of like thousands of people. And to be in like a fatal 4-way match with like Zoe, Taryn, and Ava, 3 girls that I started wrestling with a couple years ago, to have a match, the 4 of us together, and then being like my first title defense for the PWA Women's Championship, even though I lost it, like I don't even care about that. Just to share that moment with those girls was like everything to me. And like when I went back to Canada last month, I wrestled all of them individually, like in singles matches. And that was my last match that I had in Canada before I came back. And like, I remember just thinking going into that match, how much that meant to me and like just the emotion behind it all. And then even like afterwards, I posted a photo of it on my Instagram about like the 4 of us like hugging together. And like, it's kind of fitting with like, to me, that was kind of like our curtain call moment. It was like, that was my last match and I was going to go come back to the States, and to like share that moment with all those girls was just, it's the best moment I've had in wrestling. I love them all so much. And like, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of interviewing Zoe and Ava already, and even just like getting to talk to you today. Like there's just like a great vibe and like attitude with you all, of course, like great wrestling abilities as well. But I feel like it's home for you, you know? So of course it's going to be an emotional moment. Now you still do technically probably have a rematch clause. So
I better.
Sure, yeah. You'll be back for sure.
Yeah,
but
I'll
definitely
be back for sure. And like, and you've talked to Zoe. She is such a phenomenal wrestler. And like, I look forward to wrestling Zoe all over the world. And I think that we'll do that one day. And like, she was my very first wrestling match. And we had an amazing match together at RCW this past February. And I think they're still kind of putting that match together with commentary and stuff. But once we get commentary on it, like I want everyone to see that match. Like I'm so proud of that match, and it was so much fun. And just to see how much both of us have grown as performers and wrestlers in like kind of a really short amount of time, especially with like the pandemic and everything, was really, really special. And we got to be the main event that night on that card. And that was really, really cool too.
Definitely too, from what I've seen, such an emotional moment, and I'm sure you'll get your rematch clause and maybe reclaim the championship. But as it still stands, you still are the longest reigning PWA
That's
women's
right. Don't
champion.
forget it.
Of course, like you mentioned at the beginning, when you moved from Canada to Texas last year, that's definitely a big life decision moving. Did you maybe notice a big difference besides the weather, of course, within like the atmosphere, whether it be the food, the people, just the overall vibes of Texas versus Alberta?
It's funny because it's like Alberta and Texas are like almost, they're very similar, like the culture. Alberta's kind of like a cowboy-ish type, very conservative typically type place, and so is Texas. So I didn't really notice too much of a difference, really. The portions for food is like crazy. They give you so much food here. But I didn't notice too much of a difference, to be honest, which was kind of nice and made the transition a little bit easier. For me, the only thing that like was hard was like not having like any like nature around, like really. I just miss trees and like open spaces.
Of course. I'm sure once you explore Texas some more, because I'm sure you've been very busy, hopefully you can find some space to be able to do that. Obviously, you probably won't be able to go snowboarding, unfortunately, in Texas. But I mean, you always have the return to Canada. So at least there's
Austin is really nice. I have a couple friends that live in Austin, and I've visited there a couple of times. And Austin's a very nice nice city, and not as busy as Houston. Houston is just very, very busy. So that's not really my vibe. I'm pretty like laid back and chill. So
of course,
I like to be busy, but like on my own terms.
Yeah, I completely get that. Like your schedule stacked up between a shoot, job, wrestling, and everything in between. And of course, we talked a bit earlier about snowboarding, but you also played college basketball as well. So can you give me a little more? You see, you've thought about going snowboarding, and then also you played college basketball. So can you tell me more about your experience with college basketball?
Oh, basketball. I love basketball. So I played basketball all growing up. I got a scholarship to play college basketball after high school. And I did 2 years at college. I didn't really come out with anything. I tried doing business and I wasn't really into that. I wish I would have stuck that out. But I was mostly just there to play ball, and I really enjoyed it. It was really awesome. We got to we went to a trip to California, and just like every weekend you were like traveling to like play games, go play at other schools and stuff, which was like really cool. So it's kind of, in a sense, it's a little similar to like wrestling, because you're traveling around to like to play, and you have like a locker room of really great women that I got to be very close with over those 2 years. They were like my family. I barely saw like my friends and my family those 2 years I was playing college basketball, because my life was, we had basketball 6 days a week. So we had one day off to like relax, and then it was back to the grind. And it was really awesome. I was really young when I was playing college basketball. I started school a little bit earlier, so I was only 17 when I started playing college ball. And so I learned a lot. I had to grow up really fast. And I don't know, it was awesome. It was a great experience. I still love to go shoot around every once in a while, but yeah, I love basketball so much. It was really fun.
What was that, like your childhood aspiration, or when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grow up?
I wanted to be in the WNBA. I remember there was this movie that came out. It was called Juwanna Man. I don't know if you remember it.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was this like guy who, I think he wanted to be an NBA player, but he wasn't good enough. So he dressed as a woman to be on a WNBA team. And I was like, man, these women are really good at basketball. I was like, I'm not bad. Like, maybe I'll give this a try. So then I started playing basketball, because I would play like shoot around with my brothers, go to basketball hoop in our backyard. And then I don't know, I've always been athletic. So I kind of just took to it pretty easily and just trained more. Looking back, I think I could have dedicated myself a lot more to it. And I think my immaturity at the time had part to do with it. But I think if I had, I don't know, just the maturity, or like maybe like the coaching and role models that I have like now in my life, I probably could have succeeded more at basketball. But I also had to like think about my education as well. I wasn't really doing much at that college I was playing at. I wanted to like, outside of wrestling, I'm a nurse. So I wanted to be a nurse, and the school I was at didn't provide that education. So I had to go to a different college. And then I just didn't really get into playing basketball again after that. So I had my 2 years of college ball, which was like really fun. And I love those memories that I have. But yeah, it was really cool.
Very athletic person growing up, snowboarding, wrestling, basketball, and plus being a nurse.
Yeah.
You got a lot of stuff going on for you too. Perio Magazine is a bi-monthly physical print magazine highlighting individuals with the desire to create. The latest issue of Perio Magazine is a special Aussie wrestling edition focusing on the heroes behind the scenes. Find Perio online at www.periomagazine.com.au. That's www.periomagazine.com.au. Again, that's www.periomagazine.com.au. And you mentioned earlier, we were talking a bit about being active in yoga too. Is that something that still stands true for you like today?
A little bit. I haven't gotten, I always tell myself I need to get back into my yoga practice just to help with like my mobility and stretching and stuff. I've done a lot more like kind of like bodybuilding and weightlifting just to kind of get stronger in the ring. But yeah, I definitely like, especially during the pandemic, like yoga was like huge for me. And that's kind of how I kept, because like you can, you kind of do it anywhere. So that was like really, really great. I always try to get back more into that. I really like there's like the kind of like the slower yoga, but I like more like power and like movement type yoga. Like I started getting into this thing called like animal flow, which is
Really?
kind of like yoga movements, but it's with like yoga poses, but with a lot more like movement structured on like how like animals move. So it was really, really cool. And I was really into that. And that's definitely something I want to try to get back into, especially just with like, staying limber and keeping everything flowing and, with injury and stuff, just to kind of keep everything loose. So,
Can you give me an example, and not that you have to strike the pose, but can you give me an example of one of the animal poses that you would do?
So one of them is kind of like, I think it's called like oh my gosh, now I'm like blanking on the names. There's like a scorpion. So it's
Okay.
kind of like a downward dog, but then you would like kick your leg up and arch it around. So you kind of look like a scorpion. And then
Okay.
you would go back into like a crab position where you kind of walk in like a crab and then you move around like a gorilla. Like it sounds weird, but it's really, really cool. And like you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, I can try that. But it is like, it's very like cardio heavy. And just to like, you engage a lot of your core muscles, a lot of your shoulders, your everything. It's like a full body workout when you're just literally like moving around like an animal. It's really neat. So like, and if you just like YouTube like animal flow, a bunch of stuff will come up, and it's a really, really fun, cool workout.
It sounds like it. Very intense too, having to
Yeah.
be like core, like you got to have balance for that too.
Oh yeah, you definitely do. And so it's really neat, and actually kept me very, especially during the like the pandemic when like the
Yeah.
gyms were closed and everything like that. It kept me like very like lean and trim, and like my core strength was crazy. And then I was getting really good at doing like handstands, and that's the thing I need to work on more. I can't really do those anymore, but I was not that I could really do them, but I was getting there. And then I kind of fell out of it. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've seen a few years ago you had like shots of you doing like headstands and handstands. I just thought it
yeah.
was so cool, but it takes a lot of work and
Yeah. Headstands I can
coordination.
still do. Handstands I still struggle with, but working on it.
See, I would think, maybe I'm not involved. I would think that headstands would be harder than handstands. Interesting.
You have more of a base because you have like your
True.
head and your hands,
True.
right? And it is, you have to be like balanced on like the proper part of your head. But with handstand, it's like all your hands. And it's like, if you ever done a handstand against the wall, it's like your body's pretty heavy.
Yeah, and all the blood
So,
rushing to your head.
yeah, yeah. So it's a very, very cool skill. So I want to try to work on that a little bit more.
Hmm. And I mean, speaking of like working on perfecting moves in training, is there maybe like a certain move or spot that you've seen or thought of that you wanted to try at least once in pro wrestling?
Well, I really, really want to be able to do like a springboard into like a move. and I've been working on it, and I can springboard onto the top rope from like the apron, but you have to be able to do a springboard 10 out of 10 times if you're going to do it in a match.
Yeah.
I'm probably like 8 out of 10. So I don't want to risk trying to do a springboard. I want to do like a springboard to a drop kick, which like I can do, but I just can't do it 100% of the time. So, and that's the thing too, with wrestling, with so many different promotions and different rings, all the rings are a little bit different and the ropes are a little bit different. Like when we wrestled in that PWA show at the Saddle Dome, those ropes were like janky as all hell. They were bouncing all over the place. And I think it's because we built the ring on ice. So like we didn't have like a good base. So like it was hard to get the ropes to have like equal tension everywhere. And that's something that I've experienced on like places that didn't build the ring on the ice, that like sometimes the ropes just aren't tightened properly. So you can't get the same bounce off of them. So that's something I want to work on more, but I just have to keep practicing.
I mean, fair enough too. Like those are scary too, because you can get like caught in the ropes or fall off of it if you don't have it.
Yeah.
A lot of coordination. I mean, you're getting there. 80% is pretty good. You're
it's not bad, but it's not 100%. It's not
fair.
10 out of 10. So
but that's where practice comes in. Practice makes perfect, right?
Yeah.
And with wrestling too, I must say you have a very unique look and ring gear style. And so from your own words, how would you describe Gigi Rey's overall look, vibe, and character?
Gigi Rey, I'm a baller. That's who I am. Like, I'm a baller by character and by nature. Like I love to play basketball. I love hip hop music. I love that kind of like urban culture. It's not that it's like how I grew up, but it's like that was always the music I was always listening to growing up, especially with like NBA and like hip hop. They're kind of like synonymous with each other. And yeah, so that's just kind of the vibe and attitude I bring to the ring. It's actually kind of helped me a little bit kind of going back to like my basketball roots, because you do kind of have that like kind of like intense, like I'm gonna be in your face, I'm better than you attitude, because you kind of have that kind of like swagger when you play ball a little bit. And so I try to bring that kind of like NBA swagger to like wrestling. And yeah, so I guess working on all that stuff, putting it together, making Gigi Rey, G Money, baby.
G Money. I like that. You need to trademark that.
Yeah.
From your perspective too, I like asking people this because I feel like everybody has a different like vision when it comes to ring gear and stuff like that. Who do you think is the best ring gear game or aesthetic in pro wrestling today, other than yourself?
No, ring gear aesthetic, like I love Sasha. Like she's a big inspiration for me. Obviously, I think you can kind of see that kind of just like in my attitude and the way I wrestle, the way I dress. I really love how she comes out. Especially I think Becky, what she's doing right now is like really, really cool. It really stands out, and you can always kind of see where she's kind of taking a little bit of inspiration from. Like she was doing a whole lot of like Elton John type like outfits that she was coming out in.
Too,
yeah. So I thought that was like really cool. Those are the two that really like stick out in my mind for like ring gear and appearance right now. I know there's like tons of other people for sure, but those two really like stand out to me right now.
You know what? Like Sasha Banks, I think, is the most popular answer every time I've asked this. People about, I think 5 or 6 people have said this. And I feel like I absolutely agree with them, because I mean, her gear, like whatever she does, I mean, she has her own structure down and owns it, but like she like tweaks it, whether it's the color scheme or like certain details, and it's always like impeccable.
Yeah. Or when she did that one, it was like brown, but it was kind of like Louis Vuitton.
Yes.
Like, girl, like that was so nice.
I know. So definitely Sasha Banks is definitely up there in terms of like ring gear game. Very strong, very strong.
But one of my favorite ring gear that someone ever came out with was when Seth Rollins came out in the all white.
Yes. Like, yes.
Yeah. White Ranger Rollins is like top.
He needs to like come up with like maybe an upgraded version of that, because a lot of people popped for it, including myself.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
I mean, the time of recording this, Mania season's coming around. He still doesn't have an opponent, which is so good. So that's a whole other discussion, but I'm excited to see what he pulls out for Mania. He has to be doing something for that.
Oh, he has to, for sure.
But looking towards the future, I have two more questions for you, by the way. Looking towards the future, I mean, you've accomplished so much. Former PWA women's champion, you're now in the Texas scene. What are some of your personal or professional goals you'd like to accomplish in the next few years?
In the next few years, I've really enjoyed working here on the Texas scene. So I definitely want to work more here out in Texas. I'm starting to pick up a little bit of steam at Reality of Wrestling. So I'd really, really like to be a big factor in that promotion. And then I also want to get out to Florida, and I want to work the Florida Texas scene. And then, and I really, really want to go to Japan. That is like on the very top of my list, would be to wrestle out there and get a tour out there for a couple months. And I've always wanted to travel there. So Florida, Japan, I'd love to go to the UK. And then like, I would love to just an opportunity to do more TV stuff, and maybe get signed one day. Like, I think for a lot of people, that's like their goal. And I know for me, like that is my goal too. And I'm not scared to say that. I don't like, that's my dream, is to be assigned a TV wrestler. So that's what I want.
Yeah, you've definitely had some experience with AEW and WWE, but you're on your way there. I feel like you've already had a strong showing, and it's crazy. It feels like even longer than a year since you moved to the US. It was like July of last year, right?
Yeah, it hasn't even been a year yet.
No, and you've already done so much, I feel like.
Oh, thanks. It's been a really cool, I don't know, what is it, 8-9 months I've been here now. And yeah, I feel like I have had an opportunity to do a lot of really cool stuff, work with a lot of really cool people, a lot of great promotions. And yeah, and then even like promotions back in Canada, like I'm going out to Vancouver in a couple months to work with them. So to kind of get those opportunities, and like they found me while I was wrestling here in the States, like not even when I was wrestling in Canada. So it's like, that's kind of like cool too, that I'm getting noticed by like other promotions back home, even though I'm here. So that's really been pretty cool.
You're gonna be traveling worldwide soon. I mean, you kind of already have, but for wrestling too, I think it's really cool to experience new places and experience that. And of course, to round things out, we are all about hashtag girl power here on our Wrestling Gal. It is Women's History Month at the time of recording this. So for you, is there any female in your personal or professional life that inspires or empowers you the most, you think?
Well, definitely in my personal life, my mom, 100%. My mom is from the Philippines, and she moved to Canada on her own by herself at like 26, 27 years old, just so she can make a better life for her family back in the Philippines. And my mom is the hardest worker I've ever met in my life. She never stops. She's like 68 and still working full time, and then does like, as a primary caregiver for my grandma, and like still sends money to the Philippines, and just is the most generous woman I've ever met. And so she, for me, is such a huge role model of like just the type of person that I want to be. And if I can be like an inch of the type of person that my mom is, like, I would be happy. And so I always look to her for just like her generosity of her heart and her kindness, and how hard she works, how much she hustles. So yeah, my mom definitely. Professionally, I love Ronda Rousey. I think what she has done for like women in combat sports, and just to put women on the platform that she has, with like being the first signed woman to the UFC and going into the Hall of Fame, and then like branching out into the mainstream. I think she has done so much for like women in sports. And then I'm a really big fan of the Bellas as well, kind of from what they've been able to do to kind of be like these like model type girls, get into wrestling, and then kind of build an empire for themselves afterwards. Has been really cool. And then as well, most recently, I got to meet Natty. I trained with her a little bit too. And same thing with her, just how much she has helped so many female wrestlers in their journey in wrestling. Like, you hear interviews from people, from the girls in WWE, and all of them say how much Natty has helped them. And I think for me, you hear that saying that it's like, you want to leave the business better than you found it. And I think all of those women have done that. And yeah, so that's super inspiring to me, and something I hope that I can do one day too.
Now, when Nikki Bella and Ronda Rousey were going at it at Evolution, who were you rooting for?
Oh, Ronda for sure.
And I mean, at the time of this,
I will never root against Ronda. I'll just put that up.
Fair. So it's safe to say you're rooting her heading into Wrestlemania.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. And maybe at the time when this drops, she could be the SmackDown Women's Champion. Likely will be. We'll see what happens though.
Yeah.
So much is coming up in the next few weeks. But Gigi, before I let you go, can you please tell the listeners where they can find you on all your social medias?
Oh, I am Gigi Wrestling on Instagram and Twitter. And that's where you can find me. I'm a little bit more active on Instagram than I am on Twitter, but that's where I am, Gigi Wrestling.
See, I'm the opposite. I find that very fascinating. I'm like not so much Instagram heavy. I'm more Twitter, but I find that extremely fascinating.
Oh. Well, I actually only got Twitter for wrestling. I was never on it before. And like my trainer from home, he was like, you need to be better at Twitter. So I was like, okay, like I'll try. So even still, I don't really tweet a lot. I do a lot of retweeting, but I don't do a lot of like personal tweets, but I don't know. It seems to be working. So yeah.
That still counts. But Gigi, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it was a blast. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.